The hotel glowed like a palace that night. Golden lights spilled over white tablecloths and mirrored walls. Every flower was arranged perfectly, every plate aligned with precision. I arrived early, of course. I always did. My mother handed me a clipboard the second I walked in. No greeting, just tasks. She trusted me to handle the details, the quiet work no one noticed. That was my role. The dependable daughter. The one who never made a scene. Mai arrived 40 minutes late. Her laughter cut through the music like glass. She wore red, shimmering and loud, a woman who thrived on attention. TU letter 1EA5N followed behind her, pale, exhausted, carrying their son's jacket. They looked like a picture torn from two different stories. People turned, smiling, whispering. Mai soaked it in, as if the night belonged to her. I adjusted a vase and pretended not to care. But my stomach tightened. I'd seen that look on her face before, right before disaster. When the speeches began, I sat at a corner table near the wall. Far from the cake, far from the spotlight. Mai's table was in the center, right next to my father's. Of course. My mother had made sure of that. Dad stood, tall and proud, his voice still carrying the command of decades in business. Family means everything, he said, raising his glass. I smiled politely. I'd heard it 1,000 times. He went on about gratitude, about love, about legacy. Then his tone changed. As you know, Mai and TU letter 1EA5 and have been facing difficult times, he said. Through no fault of their own. My chest tightened. I knew what was coming before he even said it. And tonight, he continued, I am proud to share that Linh, our eldest daughter, has agreed to help. Laughter, applause, the clinking of glasses. My ears rang. She's offered to pay the amount needed to keep their home. 4 billion D-stroke letter 1ED3NG. A true act of family. The world froze. I didn't move. Didn't breathe. 50 faces turned toward me, smiling, nodding, approving. I forced a smile that felt carved from stone. My mother's eyes met mine across the table, sharp, warning. Don't ruin this, they said. Mai dabbed at her eyes like a saint. TU letter 1EA5 and stared down at his plate, silent. The applause faded into a buzzing in my head. I set down my wine glass. I never agreed to that, I said quietly. The room went still. Utensils paused midair. Dad blinked, his practiced composure faltering. Now's not the time to be modest, he said smoothly. I'm not being modest, I replied. I'm correcting a lie. A gasp rippled through the guests. Mai's eyes widened, and my mother's smile cracked. Sweetheart, she whispered, don't make a scene. I looked at her. I'm not making a scene. You already did. The silence that followed was the loudest sound I'd ever heard. And for the first time in my life, I didn't look away. My father's face hardened. That same expression he used in meetings, not in moments of love. Linh, he said slowly, don't embarrass your family in front of our guests. I kept my eyes on him. I'm not embarrassed, Dad. I'm just surprised to hear I spent 4 billion without knowing it. A few people chuckled nervously. The tension was thick enough to taste. My mother stood beside him, her hand resting on his arm. Your sister needs help, she said softly, but her eyes were steel. You're successful, Linh. You can handle this. It's not about handling it, I said. It's about choice, and I wasn't given one. Mai sniffled delicately, playing her part. You don't understand what it's like, she whispered. I have 2 children. They need a roof, stability. I'm just trying to keep my family together. Her voice cracked perfectly, rehearsed like a script. I almost admired her performance. Dad sighed, disappointed, like I'd failed a test I didn't know I was taking. Your sister has always struggled, he said. You've always been the strong one. It's your duty to step in. Duty. That word again. The chain they'd wrapped around my neck since childhood. I took a slow breath. My duty, I said, is to live my own life, not to clean up everyone else. Gasps fluttered around the room like startled birds. My mother's tone turned sharp. Don't be ungrateful. We've given you everything. Everything except freedom, I said quietly. Mai's tears turned to indignation. So what? You're really going to let my kids lose their home? I met her gaze. I didn't make them lose it. You did. TU letter 1EA5, and shifted uncomfortably beside her, but said nothing. Dad's voice rose, cold and formal. If you walk away from this, Lynn, you walk away from us. I smiled faintly. That's the first honest thing anyone said tonight. The guests stared, trapped between shock and fascination. This wasn't the party they'd expected. My mother reached out, pleading now. Sweetheart, don't do this. You'll regret it when we're gone. Her words stung, but I didn't flinch. I already regret all the times I stayed silent, I said. Mai slammed her napkin onto the table. You always think you're better than me. I shook my head. No, I just think actions have consequences. The air cracked like glass. Dad turned to the guests, forcing a brittle smile. I think we've had enough drama for one evening, he said. But no one moved. Everyone was watching me. And I realized, maybe for the first time, that they'd never seen me at all. I stood slowly. If helping means losing myself, then I choose not to help. My mother's lips parted in disbelief. Mai's face twisted with rage. And my father, proud and silent, said the words that changed everything. You're no longer our daughter. I looked at him, at the man who taught me discipline but not compassion. Then I nodded once. Good, I said. Because tonight, I finally became my own person. No one spoke for several seconds. The silence felt like a wall closing in. Then I reached into my purse and pulled out a cream envelope. My hands didn't shake. They'd waited for this moment longer than I had realized. I didn't come here unprepared, I said. My mother frowned. What is that? Documentation, I replied. Of a loan, 1 billion D-stroke letter 1ED3NG, signed and notarized. Mai's face went white. That's not what it was, she stammered. That was a gift. I laid the papers flat on the table. It was a contract. You promised to repay me in 2 years. You never did. The guests whispered among themselves. My father leaned closer, reading the header, his jaw tightening. Is this true? He asked quietly. Mai shook her head, so fast her earrings caught the light. She's twisting it. She wanted to help me start my business. Yes, I said. And you used the money to buy a car. Laughter rippled through the room, uneasy, embarrassed, sharp. Mai's tears fell faster, but the act was slipping. TU letter 1EA5, and S hand trembled on his glass. Then he spoke, voice flat, defeated. She's telling the truth. Mai froze. TU letter 1EA5N don't. He looked up for the first time all evening. You've been lying to them for years, he said. You even opened credit cards under Mom's name. The sound of glass breaking echoed across the room. My mother's hand had dropped her champagne. My name, she whispered. TU letter 1EA5 and nodded. She said it was temporary, while you were sick, but she maxed them out. Gasps filled the air. Even my father's face cracked, fury and disbelief colliding. You stole from your mother, he said, voice shaking. I was desperate, Mai cried. You always gave everything to her. She pointed at me, trembling. I just wanted a chance. I met her eyes. You wanted an excuse. Naomi, no, how my friend, my lawyer, stepped forward. I've reviewed the contract, she said calmly. It's legal and enforceable. Lynn has every right to recover her funds. Mai spun toward her. You don't know anything about family. Has tone stayed even? Family doesn't mean theft. Someone in the crowd muttered agreement. Others stood, watching like witnesses in a courtroom. My father rubbed his temple, his authority unraveling. You lied to all of us, he said to Mai. You lied to yourself. Mai's voice broke. You think I wanted this. You think I planned to fail. Tears smeared her makeup into gray streaks. I tried to be someone, but no one believed in me. I took a step closer. Belief isn't a loan, Mai, and love isn't a blank check. The weight of truth hung heavy between us. My mother covered her mouth. Tu-letter-1-E-A-5 and closed his eyes. And for the first time, I felt something strange. Not anger. Not triumph. Just release. The kind that comes when you stop protecting a lie. Mai's breathing turned ragged. Her eyes darted wildly from me to my parents, searching for a way out. But there wasn't one anymore. The truth was finally louder than her tears. I took another envelope from my bag, thicker than the first. You want honesty, I said. Here it is. I unfolded a spreadsheet, pages covered in dates and numbers. Over the past 10 years, Mai has borrowed more than 3 billion D-letter-1-ED-3NG. From me, from relatives, from anyone willing to believe her stories. My father's face paled. My mother whispered something that sounded like a prayer. I pointed at each line on the paper. 2015, 8 million for car repairs. Spent on a designer handbag. 2016, 12 million for her boutique. It closed in 6 months. 2017, 5 million for school fees. Public school doesn't cost that much. Mai screamed. Stop it, you're humiliating me. I looked at her calmly. No, you did that yourself. Tu-letter-1-E-A-5 and stood abruptly. There's more, he said quietly. She's been gambling. The room gasped again. Mai turned on him, fury breaking through the mask. Shut up, Tu-letter-1-E-A-5N. He didn't. I found the receipts. Casino apps, online bets, even pawn tickets. My father slammed his hand against the table. Enough. But his voice shook. For the first time, he wasn't the one in control. Has spoke clearly, her tone cutting through the chaos. Given the amount of documented debt, Linh has grounds for legal action. My mother's lips trembled. You'd see your own sister. She's not my sister, I said softly. Not anymore. My sobs turned to laughter, sharp and broken. You think you're better than me. You think people will love you for this. I met her gaze. I don't need them to. I just need to stop pretending. The guests began whispering, some standing, others avoiding eye contact. My father sank into his chair, aged years in seconds. My mother clutched her pearls like they could keep her steady. Tu-letter-1-E-A-5 and looked at Mai one last time. I'm filing for divorce, he said. I can't protect you anymore. Her body went still. The words hit harder than anything I'd said. You can't leave me, she shouted. But he already had. He turned and walked out, shoulders heavy but sure. The room stayed silent, except for my shaking breaths. I gathered the papers back into the envelope. This isn't revenge, I said. It's truth. My father didn't look up. My mother stared through me like I was a stranger. Maybe I was. Because the Linh they knew would have stayed quiet. Would have kept the peace no matter the cost. But that Linh was gone. And in her place stood someone who finally understood that peace built on lies isn't peace at all. The ballroom felt colder now. The music had stopped, the laughter long gone. Only the sound of shallow breathing and broken pride filled the air. I stood still, surrounded by gold lights that suddenly looked cheap. Mai sat slumped in her chair, mascara streaking her cheeks. Tu-letter-1-E-A-5, and S chair was empty, still turning slightly where he'd left it. My parents stayed frozen, like marble statues watching their legacy crumble. I placed the envelope back into my purse. I'm giving you 90 days, I said quietly. After that, I'll file in court. Mai looked up, her eyes red, wild. You destroy your own blood for money. I'm not destroying anyone, I said. I'm just done being your insurance policy. My mother's hand slammed against the table. Enough, Lynn. You can't do this to your family. I turned toward her. You already did when you turned love into a transaction. Her lips parted, but no words came. My father finally spoke, his voice tired, defeated. You think this makes you right? No, I said. It just makes me free. He looked away, unable to meet my eyes. Guests began gathering their things quietly, pretending not to stare. The ones who'd clapped earlier now avoided me completely. That's how truth works. It empties a room faster than shame. Mai pushed herself up, wobbling, her fury flickering again. You'll regret this. You'll be alone forever. I didn't answer. I'd been alone for years. I just hadn't realized it until tonight. I walked to my side, calm as ever. Are we done here? She asked. I nodded once. My mother muttered something about ungrateful children. My father stared at the floor, silent, small. I turned to leave, my heels clicking like punctuation marks on marble. Every step felt lighter. Every breath sharper, cleaner. At the door, I looked back one last time. Mai was crying into her hands. My parents were arguing in whispers, their perfect image shattered. For a moment, I almost felt pity. Then I remembered how many years I'd traded my peace for theirs. Ha opened the door, and cool night air rushed in. The scent of rain, the sound of distant traffic, it felt like freedom. Outside, I exhaled. My chest loosened for the first time in decades. You okay? Ha asked softly. I smiled faintly. Better than I've ever been. We walked to her car in silence. Behind us, the hotel lights shimmered like the last spark of a dying lie. Inside that room, everything I used to protect was collapsing. And for once, I didn't rush to fix it. Sometimes, you have to let the house burn before you can rebuild. And that night, I finally stopped holding the matches for everyone else. 3 months passed before the noise faded. The calls stopped, the whispers quieted, and I finally moved into my own place. A small apartment near a park, nothing fancy but mine. The first night, I sat on the balcony with tea and silence. No voices, no demands, no guilt pressing on my chest. Just air, clean and free. I cried, not from sadness but from relief. For the first time, my life belonged to me. Mai entered rehab for gambling addiction. TU letter 1EA5N filed for divorce and got custody of the kids. My parents didn't speak to me again. They sent one message through a cousin, do the right thing. I deleted it without replying. Every Sunday, I cooked dinner for TU letter 1EA5N and the children. Nam learned how to budget using a simple app I showed him, and drew pictures of me with a cape and a giant calculator. She said I was the money hero. I framed one for my office wall. It made me smile every morning. Has stopped by often, always with takeout and dry humor. She said I'd built my piece like a case file, methodical, detailed, unshakable. She wasn't wrong. Some nights, though, the quiet felt heavy. I'd wonder if I'd done the right thing. Then I'd remember that peace without truth is just silence pretending to be calm. Mai sent me a letter 1 month later. No apology, not really. Just a line that said, I'm sick, I'm trying, I'm sorry you got caught in the middle. I didn't reply. Healing doesn't always mean reunion. Sometimes it means distance. One evening, while helping Nam with homework, he asked, do you miss Grandma and Grandpa? I thought for a long moment. I miss the idea of them, I said. The version that made me believe love didn't need payment. He nodded slowly, like he understood more than his age allowed. Life settled into rhythm again. Work walks in the park, laughter over dinner, quiet nights with tea. Freedom looked ordinary but felt extraordinary. Months later, I hosted a small dinner for the people who stayed. Ha, TU letter 1EA5M, the kids, and my kind neighbor Mrs. Lamb. We ate noodles and cheap wine from mismatched glasses. I made a sign out of cardboard and glitter. It read, Aunt Lynn's house, Lynn's rules. We laughed until our stomachs hurt. That night, I realized something. Family isn't who shares your blood. It's who shares your respect. It's who sees your worth without asking for sacrifice. I used to think saying no made me cold. Now I know it made me whole. The girl who once stayed silent had learned to speak. The woman who fixed everyone else had finally chosen herself. And in that tiny apartment with the balcony view, I knew I was home. 6 months later, life felt quieter, softer, real. The scars remained, but they no longer ached. Mai sent another letter, shorter this time. I'm getting better, she wrote. Tell the kids I love them. I folded it and placed it in a drawer. Some things don't need answers. My father never reached out, but I heard from TU letter 1EA5 N that he listened to my podcast once. He said nothing, but that was enough. The kids visited every weekend, bringing drawings and chaos. Laughter filled my apartment again, the kind that healed. On Sunday mornings, I'd sit on my balcony with tea and sunlight. I'd watch people passing below, living their quiet stories. For years, I thought freedom meant walking away. Now I knew it also meant standing still and feeling peace. Family used to mean obligation. Now it means honesty. Love used to mean sacrifice. Now it means choice. I closed my eyes, breathed in the morning air, and smiled. The past was heavy, but I was stronger. And somewhere deep inside, I whispered to myself, I made it home.